Welcome back. Welcome to the Premier Mindset by Premier Performance LLC. I'm your host, Trent Mailer, LCSW, clinical therapist and performance coach, and this is episode 28. Life doesn't just test your strengths when things are easy. It tests it when everything goes sideways, when stress piles up, when plans fall apart, and when quitting feels easier than pushing forward. That's where mental resilience either carries you through or breaks you down. Think about athletes playing through pain, entrepreneurs surviving failure, or even you getting through a season when it felt like the world was against you. The difference between those who fold and those who rise isn't talent or luck, it's resilience, the ability to bend without breaking. Today we're going to break down what resilience really is, how to build it, and the tools you can start using today to become unshakable when life hits hard. This isn't about being tough for the sake of it. It's about developing the mental flexibility and strength to adapt, recover, and keep moving. Quick note before we dive in, this podcast is for education and performance growth. It is not a replacement for therapy or medical treatment. If there is something you need, go get it. This isn't going to be a replacement for those things. It's not going to be as effective as those things. So let's go get what we need. And if you're not sure what you need, you can always ask me and let me know too, and I might be able to point you in a direction. Another note, you can watch these full episodes on YouTube or Spotify, and it is also out on Apple Podcasts to listen to. And I'll be sharing clips across Instagram, TikTok, LinkedIn, and X. Hit subscribe or follow if you want to catch every drop of new content. All the links are in the show notes, and we have new stuff coming out every week. Now let's get into it. If you've ever felt like you tend to break down when things get hard or you get in your own way, this episode is for you. First, let's start with what is mental resilience. Resilience is the ability to adapt well in the face of adversity, trauma, tragedy, threats, or significant stress. It helps allow individuals to bounce back from difficult experiences and maintain well-being. It is not an innate trait, but a skill that can be learned and developed over time through coping strategies, positive relationships, and self-care. So we're going to get into a lot of different things about resilience. But first, I think it'll be helpful to cover some myths and some realities, because oftentimes we get caught up believing things that aren't exactly true about some of these situations, and it can make things harder for us in the long run. Mental resilience myths include the idea that it's an innate trait, it requires suppressing emotion, or it means never feeling pain. The reality is that resilience is a learned skill, a dynamic process of adapting to adversity, and often involves experiencing difficult emotions but responding with adaptive strategies, like seeking social support, and that it's a solitary endeavor, that this is something we have to do all by ourselves, because that's not true either. True resilience encompasses accepting challenges, not instant recovery, and recognizes the necessity of seeking help as a sign of strength, not weakness. So some common myths and their corresponding realities. Myth: resilience is an inborn trait you either have or don't. Reality: resilience is a skill and a process that can be learned, practiced, and improved over time like any other skill. If this was just an innate trait, this would be a really bad topic for me to do an episode on, because I'd essentially just be telling you what this is, and that's kind of it. You can't do anything about it. This is something you can change on your own through work, effort, and strategy. So let's take advantage of this, and let's not just accept that this is where I am and this is where I'm always going to be, because that's not always the truth either. Another myth: resilient people don't experience emotional pain or tough times. In reality, even resilient individuals experience negative emotions and difficult days. Their resilience is demonstrated by how they respond and adapt to those feelings and challenges. It's less about getting things gone and more about how do we deal with it. Another myth: resilience means instantly recovering from adversity. While in reality, resilience is a dynamic process of continuous adaptation, not just a quick return to a previous state. Recovery can be non-linear with periods of progress and regress. It can go up, it can go down. Life is not a straight line. And another one: resilience is about being tough and handling everything alone. While in reality, seeking help and building strong relationships and connections is crucial for nourishing resilience. Resilience involves recognizing when you need external support and utilizing communal resources, being able to do things together. We are social animals. That's who we are. We need to do things together. We are not very good at doing things all by ourselves. So having a good supportive network around us to help get things done is going to help build us up and get those things done. So let's dive into some research about the difference of resilience being a skill versus a trait. Research suggests resilience is both a skill and a trait, representing a dynamic interplay between inherent disposition and learned behavior. While some innate personality traits like emotional stability and optimism can foster resilience, it is not a static characteristic that can't be changed through doing other things. Resilience can be developed through practice, learning from challenges, fostering positive emotions, using effective coping strategies, and building strong social support systems. Talking about some things connected to resilience as a trait, that goes back to that innate predisposition of certain personality traits such as extroversion, conscientiousness, emotional stability. They're all associated with higher levels of resilience. So you can have pieces of you just coming from genetics or how you were raised or things coming from your family that maybe has set you up to be better at this from like a starting spot. That does not mean that you're just going to be good at it with no effort and not working on it. That's just where we're starting. We all start at different places. We don't all start on the same level. Research suggests genes influence an individual's initial sensitivity to negative experiences, affecting their baseline portion on a resilience fulcrum. So that baseline can be different for everybody. There are some core personality factors. Their broad, stable behavioral predispositions can predict a person's likelihood of being resilient. So getting to know who someone is and who they are as a person can help you understand if they're going to be resilient or not. And it's not a 100% foolproof plan. It's just a way to see how likely they are already set up to better handle some of these things. Sometimes we're just better set up for stuff. And it doesn't mean we can't work on it or we don't need to work on it. We just might be in a better starting spot. Now, going into resilience as a skill. It's a dynamic process. Resilience is a fluctuating process that can change over time and in response to different circumstances. So certain times you're going to be more resilient than other times. Certain situations you can handle better than other situations. And it's going to be different over a whole lot of different factors coming in because there's so much interplaying in this situation. There's a lot going on. There's also learned behaviors. Resilience is built by learning from challenges and can be strengthened through practice. So we can learn what works, we can practice skills with it, we can practice strategies with it, and that's some of the stuff we're going to talk about today too. There's adaptive capacities. Key skills include self-care, maintaining a positive outlook, problem solving, and strong emotional regulation. Being able to take on more, being able to build up your capacity so you can actually handle more. And like we've talked about, supportive environments. A strong supportive network around you is going to help you get these things done and feel like you can handle more. A great example of resilience is Adrian Peterson. In 2011, as a star running back for the Minnesota Vikings, Peterson tore both his ACL and MCL in a devastating knee injury. Many wondered if he would ever regain his elite speed and explosiveness. However, through intense rehabilitation and unwavering determination, he returned in 2012 to have one of the most remarkable comeback seasons in NFL history, rushing for 2,097 yards and earning the league MVP award. So he went through a period of time where everyone thought this injury was going to kind of cripple him in some way. He was not going to be the same type of player. And he put that on his shoulder and almost used it as motivation to come back and rebuild this elite speed and explosiveness that he has. And it led to having one of the best seasons he's ever had after an injury, which is very rare to happen. A lot of times there's a dip when people come back because, maybe there's some fear of getting hurt again, or maybe they're letting their body get back into it again. Or maybe it's just not working the same way because when things break and tear, sometimes it doesn't build back exactly the same. So he really put the effort into it. He was determined. He did the work, and it showed. And this is a testament to the fact that if you are willing to put in the effort and you're willing to do what you need to do, no matter how devastating something could be, you can come back from it in some way. Depending on the situation, it might be different what that looks like, but this is kind of proof that we can show people that there is an amazing side to us humans, that we can accomplish some pretty crazy things if we really put our mind to it and work hard. So don't be afraid of putting yourself out there. Continuing on with that, let's talk a little bit about the neuroscience behind resilience. Some of what we're going to cover is stress response, neuroplasticity, and recovery. The neuroscience of resilience explains how the brain's response to stress can be modulated through neuroplasticity, allowing for recovery and adaptation to adversity. While chronic stress can cause negative structural and functional changes in the brain, resilience involves adaptive neuroplastic changes in areas like the hippocampus and prefrontal cortex. So again, neuroplastic is that ability to change pathways in our brain, to adjust how we're thinking about the world, what we believe about the world, all those kind of things. And there's past episodes that go over that more if you want to dive deeper into that. I don't want to take too much time going over that, but I just wanted to do a quick reminder of what that is. And there are some practices to improve these things, such as mindfulness, healthy lifestyle choices, supportive environments, and fostering positive neuroplasticity. Helping to strengthen neural pathways for better stress management and improved mental health builds up that resilience so we can handle things more. The stress response is a big part of this. This is kind of that threat system we talked about in episode 1. When faced with a stressful situation, the brain activates the sympathetic nervous system, which leads to the release of stress hormones. In the short term, this response is crucial for survival. However, chronic stress can induce structural changes in the brain, alter gene expression, and increase the activation of the immune system. So being under stress for long periods of time without dealing with it in helpful or effective ways can literally change how our brain is functioning and how it's dealing with situations. Neuroplasticity is the brain's ability to change its structure and function in response to experiences. While it can be suppressed by stress, it also offers the capacity for recovery and adaptation. So there's two sides of this, how we're looking at things and how it's hitting us. Certain things may not be as accessible as other things, and certain situations could build us up, while at other times it could break us down. So we got to be aware of how all this stuff is functioning. That goes back to our psychoneuroimmunology episode, where we talk about the connection of the mind, body, and the immune system and everything in between. Resilience involves adaptive neuroplasticity, where the brain reorganizes itself to adapt to stress. Positive experiences strengthen neural pathways associated with positive outcomes, which is why it can be so powerful to have positive experiences with people. And sometimes just going through a new positive experience can change our outlook on life. So don't be afraid of positive experiences. It's not all about just fixing things. Sometimes we have to give ourselves experiences to see that life isn't what we thought it was all the time. We have to sometimes break that stigma or stereotype that we have in our mind of what we think life is going to do to us. The hippocampus, which is involved in learning and memory, and the prefrontal cortex, like we talked about, they support rational thinking and executive function, are crucial for resilience. So having changes in there can really change things. Resilience is not an inborn trait, but a capacity that can be developed. By intentionally rewiring neural pathways, an individual can foster a healthier response to challenges. This is partly what I like to do with EMDR, as I've found EMDR is pretty helpful at rewiring some of these neural pathways as well. Another part that's a foundation of resilience is emotional regulation. Emotional regulation forms that foundation by providing the ability to manage intense emotions, maintain calm and clarity during stress, and make sound decisions, which allows individuals to bounce back from adversity, adapt to change, and recover from setbacks. Effective regulation prevents emotional overwhelm, it strengthens relationships, and improves overall well-being, creating a stable internal environment from which to navigate life's challenges. This is why we did an entire episode on emotional regulation. We've slowly been building a good foundation for you guys, so as we get deeper into this, that we lean back on some of these previous episodes and the things that we've talked about, because we're slowly building something moving forward. So that ability to manage emotions and regulate when they come up can really help us, because if we start panicking when things go wrong, it's going to be really hard to keep our cool and be able to manage it in an effective way. We might get a little impulsive, we might get a little reactive, we might do some things that we regret later. And with this, resilience is about flexibility, so we have to be willing to move with things. We have to be able to feel these things and adjust. If it's about rigidity, it starts to break. Resilience is about flexibility, not rigidity, because the ability to adapt and change course is more sustainable and effective than attempting to withstand all pressure without bending. A rigid mindset leads to burnout and breaking under stress, while a flexible approach allows you to adjust your thoughts, emotions, and behaviors to navigate challenges successfully. A good metaphor of this is the oak versus the willow. The contrast between the rigid oak and the flexible willow is a classic metaphor for resilience. The rigid oak is strong and unyielding. In a powerful storm, it stands its ground It stands its ground, but its lack of flexibility can cause it to snap under intense pressure. The flexible willow is also strong, but instead of resisting, it bends and sways with the wind. When the storm passes, the willow is still standing. The capacity to bend and recover is the essence of true resilience. Let's talk a little bit about why rigidity fails. A rigid mindset is a cognitive trap that leads to greater stress and limits the ability to find creative solutions. Short-term wins and long-term burnout. A force-based approach may produce temporary success, but it is not sustainable over time. This mindset often equates rest with weakness and pushes through exhaustion, leading to a higher risk of mental and physical breakdowns. It also tends to come with all or nothing thinking. Rigid thinking creates black and white patterns that makes it difficult to see alternatives. When faced with a setback, a rigid person might think, "I've failed," while a flexible person asks, "What can I learn from this?" One of those is going to build us up, the other one's going to break us down. Suppressed emotions is also a factor too. When a person is rigid, they try to suppress or ignore difficult emotions. Psychological flexibility, however, involves accepting and tolerating the full range of emotions, allowing for clearer, more intentional responses to challenges. We can build resilience in everyday habits, whether that be through self-care like sleep, nutrition, movement, exercise, mindfulness. Building resilience involves cultivating everyday habits that support your physical and mental well-being. By integrating small, consistent routines for sleep, nutrition, movement, and mindfulness, you can train your mind and body to adapt more effectively to stress and adversity. You don't have to just push through these things, and building on an everyday basis is better for us in the long run than just trying to build when things are hard. So do a little bit every day. Just keep planting seeds and see what it turns into. Another great example of somebody facing adversity and showing resilience is Simone Biles. At the 2020 Tokyo Olympics, the gymnastics superstar withdrew from several events to prioritize her mental health and combat the immense pressure she was facing. Her courage in stepping away from competition to focus on her well-being drew global attention to the mental health challenges athletes face, proving that resilience also means knowing when to rest and recover. So going back to what we talked about with the oak and the willow, if Simone just decided to push through and just do these things, maybe she would have done okay, maybe things would have gone all right, but at the same time, things could break. Things could have fallen apart in a very catastrophic way. So her walking away and stepping to the side to get what she needs taken care of is probably the best thing she could have done for her. And she recognized her own needs and what her body was telling you. And that's a really hard place to be because we have to accept something that we may not want to accept. We got to keep in mind she's training for these things for years and years at a time. To then get up and close to it and have to realize that I got to pull back and go take care of me is a really hard stance to take. And she got a lot of judgment for this. She did get some support, but she did get a lot of people coming after her for it. So this is another type of resilience. Being able to withstand any storm that comes our way and being willing to say when I need some rest and recovery and when I need something. Being able to accept that we need something that we're not getting is a very powerful thing. And if we're not able to do it, we're going to miss out on things and we're not going to be feeling good enough to operate at that high level. And it was great that she did this because it also drew that global attention to these challenges. And this is also why I do this, because oftentimes, as athletes or high performers or business professionals, we love to just push through things. Like we've gotten really good at grinding. And grinding is a great skill. It's not a bad one to have. It's just we have to use it at the right times and in the right ways. And if we don't, we can get ourselves into some pretty nasty situations that can cause a lot of problems in our life. So I wanted to bring up that situation and kind of explain how powerful it is to recognize when we do need help and to recognize when we do need to pull through something and get what we need to feel better and get back to that top performance again. Because if we try and just keep ourselves at that top when we're not ready for it, things can go wrong and it can shatter that identity. And that's a whole lot more work that you're going to have to do on your side to get yourself back ready to compete or perform at that level again. Let's talk a little bit about pressure. Resilience matters most when everything's on the line. Under high-stakes pressure, resilience allows you to move from survival-oriented state to a performance-oriented one, making the difference between success and failure. It is a learned capacity to adapt and recover from adversity, enabling you to maintain a positive outlook, solve problems, and persevere when the stakes are highest. You may have seen this at some point, watching a high-level performer, whether it's a top-level executive or an athlete or an actor or whatever it is, doing something pretty intense and crazy in a very scary situation. If you think about it and you put yourself in that person's shoes, you may freak yourself out and say, I don't know how they were able to do this or that, or think it through, or make that choice, or stay calm, whatever it might be. And a lot of that is because they have built up this armor to handle that pressure. They have set themselves up to deal with this and operate in that zone and still be successful. So we have to be able to handle the pressure, because this is when resilience matters most. This is when we really need it. This is what we build it up for. When faced with intense pressure, the body's natural fight or flight system can be triggered. That's that threat system we talked about in that first episode. In this state, you are driven by instinct, not intellect, which can prevent you from performing at your highest level. This is why resilience is key to thriving under pressure. Resilience allows you to reframe high-pressure situations from a threat into a challenge, changing your physiological and psychological response. Instead of being a barrier, pressure becomes an opportunity for growth and peak performance. So again, reframing and looking at things as a challenge versus a threat helps build us up. We've talked about that many, many times, and it's going to keep coming up because it's a core concept to a lot of what we're doing. How we look at things, the perspective we take, does matter a lot, and it's going to change how we handle things and how our body's reacting to things too. Training resilience like you train your body. It's something we do through repetition, stress inoculation, and recovery. To build psychological resilience like a muscle, you must combine repeated practice, controlled exposure to stressors, which would be the stress inoculation, and adequate recovery. This approach develops the mental and emotional strength to adapt and bounce back from adversity rather than simply enduring it. It's not about, white knuckling through it and pushing ourselves through it. It's about handling it and managing it in a strategic way and building ourselves up that's going to best go through this situation we are dealing with. The concept of training resilience is big because we often talk about training our body, but we don't think about our mind. We think it'll just be there and just catch up with whatever we're doing with our body. The train your body analogy helps explain how resilience is not a fixed trait, but a skill that can be developed over time with intention and effort. And we're going to keep hammering on that point because we want everyone to really know that wherever you are, even if you feel like you have no resilience, you can build this up. You just have to accept that this is possible and that you got to do the work. Self-talk also acts as a resilience multiplier. Language shapes our response. Again, this is why we did a whole episode on self-talk. We're going to keep building on these things, and this is why we're doing this. And it may be a little confusing sometimes where I'm taking you guys, but I promise there's always a method to my madness. You just got to kind of go with it sometimes and see where it ends up going. And you can always ask me where we're headed, and I'll always explain to you guys too. Self-talk acts as a resilience multiplier because the language we use to frame our thoughts can fundamentally shape our perception of challenges and our capacity to overcome them. By intentionally shifting from negative self-defeating language to more constructive and empowering language, we can enhance our emotional regulation, build confidence, and cultivate a growth mindset. This process, known as cognitive reframing, is a core component of cognitive behavioral therapy, CBT, and a powerful tool for personal development. And we have an activity we're going to go over a little bit later that's a little more concrete for you guys to try with cognitive reframing. The mechanism behind language and resilience. The connection between self-talk and resilience is rooted in cognitive science and psychology. There's the neuroplasticity aspect. The brain physically adapts and changes based on repeated thoughts and behaviors. Consistent and positive self-talk strengthens the neural pathways associated with optimism, confidence, and problem solving. Conversely, negative self-talk reinforces limiting beliefs and mental patterns. Confirmation bias. The brain has a built-in tendency to seek out information that confirms its existing beliefs. You've probably dealt with this at some point in your own life, trying to reassure yourself of what you believe about a situation or a person. When you habitually think, I can't do this, the brain looks for evidence to prove that statement true, ignoring contradictory evidence of successes. Reversing this with phrases like, I can learn how to do this, prompts the brain to seek out opportunities for growth because it's now going to look to prove that too. Our brain loves to jump to conclusions and back it up with evidence later. So let's be aware of what conclusions we're jumping to and which things we want to hold on to with us, because we're going to start finding a bunch of evidence to back up that thing, whatever thing we hold on to. Go back to emotional regulation again. The words you choose carry emotional weight. Shifting language from I'm so busy to I have a lot on my plate can reduce feelings of constant urgency and stress. This mindful word choice can help manage emotional responses, leading to better emotional stability. The way we talk to ourselves reshapes that inner narrative. That narrative we live by, the story we live by, that's another episode we talked about, where this stuff really shapes the way we're living our life and how we're doing things. By consciously managing the language of your internal dialogue, you can actively reframe reality in a way that builds resilience. So we can actually create resilience through a reality we are creating with our mind. A great example of this is Muhammad Ali. The boxing icon was stripped of his heavyweight title and boxing license in 1967 after refusing to be drafted in the U.S. Army for religious reasons. He spent 3.5 years away from the sport during his prime. Upon his return in 1970, Ali mounted a sensational comeback, eventually reclaiming the world championship in 1974. So he faced a very intense situation that he had to have a lot of resilience to deal and overcome and come back from. I mean, there's a lot of people out there in a lot of different sports or, endeavors where they may be at the top of that game and they take some time away and they can't ever get back to the top again. Because reaching these top levels is very hard. It is not easy to do, and it is a very thin line from falling off from that. So we do see people fall back. So to take those years away during that prime and come back and get back to that point of world champion is an amazing accomplishment. And it's really a testament to his work, his resilience, and his ability to handle things. And this also goes back to self-talk. He was huge on self-talk, how he talked about himself, how he talked to others. He would try and get in people's heads. He would impact the way people were thinking about things, trying to change their identity of themselves, trying to shift that narrative that his opponents might be saying to themselves. And, he's famous for these words of, I am the greatest. That was his self-talk for himself, to build himself up and create this resilient identity that I can handle anything. I am the greatest. That's why he said it so much. He was building himself up for success. He wasn't just trying to be cocky. It was actually a strategy to help him win. There are some things we can do to build us up before crisis hits as well, because we do want to build up resilience not just during crisis, but also before the crisis hits us. So we could talk about something called like a mental prehab. I know we love to talk about rehab, doing things after the fact, but we can prehab things. We can do it before it's even happened. To build resilience before a crisis, we want to foster a resilient mindset by practicing self-care, nurturing relationships, and framing challenges as opportunities for growth. Develop practical strategies like creating business continuity plans, understanding and mitigating risks, establishing effective communication and decision-making processes, creating strategies to deal with shortcomings or failures or athletic struggles, and additionally build and test agile crisis response teams to ensure swift adaptation and continued operation during unexpected events, whether that be in a company or a team, whatever it is, having a plan or a response ready to go so we know what to do, whether that be certain people in charge of it or certain aspects of ourselves that's going to start taking over and doing certain things. So we can cultivate a resilient mindset through those topics we talked about, like practicing self-care. If we're doing everyday things to help us manage stress and improve our well-being, it's going to help us do things better. It's going to help us handle more. We can build a good, strong, supportive network around us so we feel like we're not doing it by ourselves and we have people to lean on when we're struggling. We can work on developing a positive outlook by focusing on positive aspects of challenges, looking for that silver lining in things. We can even practice gratitude journals to kind of get us looking more at the positive side of life if we're struggling with that. And we can learn from the past. We could journal on things. We can reflect. We can look at negative situations that have happened and what happened. Why did it go that way? Help us identify what went wrong, what things worked, what things didn't. There's a lot of things that we can build up, and there's a lot of these things we've talked about in past episodes. So if you do want to dive into them deeper, you can always do that too. Flow state and resilience. The ability to reset helps you get back to flow. The ability to reset after disruption is a critical component of resilience, which in turn strengthens your capacity to return to a state of flow, which is when we're in that peak performance aspect. When an interruption breaks your intense focus, a strategic reset helps you manage the frustration, clear your mind, and rebuild the conditions needed to re-enter a deep work state. Sometimes it's not just pushing through. We have to actually reset, restart, give a second, take a breath, and get back into it again. How resilience and resetting enable flow. Resilience and flow are closely linked and mutually reinforcing. Resilience provides the emotional and psychological stability needed to overcome disruptions, while the practice of re-entering flow builds mental toughness, and the more you do it, the easier it is to exit and re-enter flow. Resilience provides a coping framework. When a task is interrupted, resilient individuals are better at navigating the stress and frustration. Instead of being derailed, they accept the change and take practical steps to regain control, such as reprioritizing or adjusting expectations. A reset is a tool for resilience. The reset is the action that resilience makes possible. Instead of getting stuck in a cycle of frustration, you acknowledge the interruption and consciously use the technique to get back on track. And instead of just pushing through and just forcing ourselves through that cycle of frustration and getting more upset about what's happening, we're very mindfully doing things. We're giving ourselves a strategy or a skill that's going to work and help us get back on track. We're acknowledging what's going on. We name it to tame it, and all those things in between. Resilience is built by regaining flow. The ability to recover and successfully return to a productive state after an interruption strengthens your mental resilience over time. Each successful reset reinforces the belief that you can handle distractions and still achieve your goals. So now some practical steps to reset and get back to flow. To cultivate a resilient mindset and reset your focus after an interruption, you can incorporate these simple, mindful practices into your routine. First, acknowledge and accept the interruption. When an interruption occurs, pause for a moment to observe the feeling of frustration or irritation without judgment. Just accept how you're feeling. By accepting that interruptions are part of work, you prevent negative emotions from completely taking over and derailing your progress, and even coming up with different statements or judgments in our mind, like I can never do this or I'm always going to fail, because these just continue to derail us and they continue to walk us away from that resilience we're looking for. Next, we can make a mental note of your progress. Write down or briefly summarize where you were before the interruption. This prevents you from wasting mental energy trying to remember your exact place and allows you to resume more quickly. So you're not trying to juggle things in your mind. Just make a note of where you were, what you were working on, take a break, let yourself reset, and then come back to it in a second. Don't just try and push through. You're not going to do better, and you're going to just make yourself more frustrated, and you're going to drag out this process. Just let yourself reset, take the time you need, and let yourself get back to it. It's going to be quickest in the long run. 3, take a brief intentional pause. Use a quick reset ritual to clear your head. This could be as simple as standing up to stretch, getting a glass of water, or looking away from your screen for a moment. Stephen Kotler, a flow expert, suggests a quick walk as a great low-grade flow state reset. So there's a lot of different things we can do, and some of it might go back to who you are as a person. Maybe sitting there having a cup of coffee and just looking out the window. But we want to find something helpful for you to let yourself reset so that when these things happen and you do feel that overwhelm, you're able to reset, get back on track again, and get back to what you need to do. After that, you want to try mindful breathing. A minute of deep breathing can calm your nervous system and quiet the mental chatter that prevents deep focus. Box breathing is a simple technique. Inhales for 4 counts, hold for 4 counts, and then I like to exhale for 5 or 6 counts, and then hold for 4 counts again. So that exhale is going to be a little longer. That's the one thing that's a little different than just the basic box breathing method. And the reason for that is it helps our body calm down a little bit more when that exhale is longer than the inhale. After we do some breathing, we could reconnect with our purpose. That would be step 5. Remind yourself of the clear goal you are working toward. This helps you recenter the intrinsic motivation of the task, making it easier to re-engage with the energy and focus. Kind of go back to your why. What am I doing and why am I doing it? If we don't have a why, it's really hard to do things. And then 6, our last thing, we can also create an anchor for your return. Just as pre-flow routines help you enter a state of focus, a post-interruption anchor can signal that it's time to re-engage, get back to work. This could be putting your headphones back on, setting a timer, or clearing your desk. Any kind of thing that just points out it's time to work again. So we want to take that break, let ourselves reset, get what we need, maybe even take some breaths, and then get ourselves back to the work and using an anchor to pull ourselves back into what we're doing. There are some differences in resilience between individual versus team sports and entrepreneurs versus corporate leaders because we're doing different things. In individual sports, such as tennis, wrestling, or track, the resilience focus is on self-reliance, internal coping, the ability to bounce back without external reinforcement. Stressors are typically isolation, full accountability for results, no teammates to share failure to lean on. There are some resilient traits that go with it, like mental toughness, self-regulation, focus under pressure, and the ability to reset after errors, because you kind of have to do it on your own. So you got to learn how to do these things to find yourself that success you're looking for. The downside risks is that it can become hyper self-critical, because resilience hinges heavily on internal mindset. And if you're blaming yourself for things going wrong every single time, and you're not sharing the blame with other people because it's not a team, it can start to break you down over time. So we've got to be aware of how much we're taking on and how we're taking it on. In team sports like football, basketball, or soccer, the resilience focus is a collective recovery. It's a relational resilience. There's trust in teammates. The stressors could be peer pressure, role conflict, reliance on others, or even team dynamics, and these things can be very complicated too. And the resilience traits often involve communication, adaptability to roles, emotional regulation in group contexts, and the ability to re-engage after group failures. So more focusing on the group or the team and doing it together. And there are some downside risks of blame shifting, a loss of confidence if group morale collapses or kind of falls apart, and things can get kind of nasty in team dynamics if we're not handling it very well. Going to entrepreneurs and corporate leaders, with entrepreneurs, the resilience focus is persistence despite uncertainty, financial risk, and repeated failure, because these things come with entrepreneurs. If you're going to go out there and do things on your own, you're going to fail a lot. There's going to be a lot of uncertainty. There's going to be a lot of times you're just not sure how it's going to work out. The stressors are going to be ambiguity, just that unknown, the resource scarcity, social skepticism, being worried what people might think, and constant pivots. We're constantly changing things up, trying to do things differently, trying to learn what works. The resilience traits are going to be optimism, creativity under constraint, tolerance for risk, intrinsic motivation, and the ability to extract meaning from failure. So being able to work with all those things, if we can build those things up, it's going to help you be an entrepreneur. There are some downsides, because nothing is perfect, nothing is all good. The downside is over-identification with the venture, personal burnout if resilience cracks. So we can become so caught up with what we're doing, what we're trying to build, that it becomes part of our identity and part of who we are, and we can't disconnect ourselves to it. And then failures within whatever we're pursuing can feel like a personal failure. For corporate leaders, it's different, like CEOs and executives in established firms. The resilience focus is on navigating systems, stakeholder pressures, and long-term strategic endurance. It's much more big and it's much more long-term. The stressors could be politics, bureaucracy, balancing shareholder expectations with what people need. And the resilient traits that come with it are usually emotional intelligence, political savvy, sustained decision-making under scrutiny, and the ability to stabilize organizations after setbacks. So again, some things do overlap a little bit, but it is very different at the same time, because you're operating in a different zone with different things, and it's usually a much bigger business or organization or company that you're working within. So there's much more going on kind of in that team interdependent play. And there are some downside risks. Resilience becomes tied to protecting the system rather than innovating, which may avoid risk to preserve stability. And we see this a lot, that sometimes people play it safe rather than put themselves out there and try and get things done. And it can stifle innovation, and it can put us into a place that we're letting life be led with fear sometimes. So there are some cross comparisons we can look at. With the individual sport and the entrepreneur, they both carry sole accountability and need internal drive, with resilience tied to personal meaning and tolerance for failure. So we have to build those things up. If we want to get in any kind of individual sport, whether we're a tennis star or something else, or we're trying to run our own company, we got to be aware of those factors. The cross comparisons between team sports and corporate leaders are also there as well, because they both rely on group cohesion and systems, with resilience rooted in relationships, communication, and shared vision. So it's a little more of a focus on working with other people and dealing with conflicts with other people. Key differences. Entrepreneurs and individual athletes need resilience against isolation and uncertainty, while corporate leaders and team athletes need resilience against interpersonal dynamics and systematic pressures. Another example of somebody handling resilience is Chris Gardner. Chris Gardner went from homeless to a stockbroker. The real-life story of Chris Gardner, who is depicted in the film of The Pursuit of Happiness, is a compelling example of personal and professional resilience. During the early 1980s, Gardner was a single father struggling with financial hardship and homelessness while pursuing a highly competitive, unpaid internship at a prestigious brokerage firm. The high stakes was that his financial insecurity placed not only on his career, but also the well-being of his young son in jeopardy. So his financial situation where he was at the time, things got pretty sketchy, but he kept pushing forward. He kept trying to figure things out because he wanted this. He wanted to create this for himself, so he kept going. And instead of giving up, Garner used his dire circumstances as motivation. He let himself keep going because he told himself there was no option to fail. His relentless determination and unyielding belief in a better future and ability to remain steadfast through extraordinary emotional stress led him to eventually succeed on Wall Street and found his own multi-million-dollar brokerage firm. So this is somebody who goes from literally like living on the street to being able to run their own multi-million-dollar firm. And yes, he had a lot of talent. He was smart, he was hardworking, all of these things, but a lot of these things can be cultivated and worked on. But really the key of it was his lack of willingness to give up. That he kept working, he kept going, and he had this belief that things would get better, and he had the ability to regulate when the emotional stress hit him, that he eventually succeeded and it worked out. So let's talk about some ways we can cognitive reframe to shift that failure into feedback so we could succeed and find that success just as Chris Gardner has or any of these other people we have talked about. To shift the perception of failure into constructive feedback, you can use cognitive reframing techniques to identify, challenge, and replace unhelpful thoughts with more balanced and realistic ones. The goal is to see setbacks as valuable data for growth rather than a measure of your worth. Notice the negative thought when facing a setback. Listen for those self-critical thoughts like I'm a failure or this proves I'm not good enough, and then you want to use thought stopping. Interrupt that negative thought spiral and reassess by saying either stop silently or out loud. Remember that stop skill is a great skill to use to stop us in place so we're not getting caught in these spirals doing things we don't want to do. We talked about that a little bit in distress tolerance. Question the evidence. Act like a detective and investigate your thoughts by asking, what proof is there that this thought is true? Is there any evidence that contradicts it? Let's check the facts. What is actually happening? Identify the cognitive distortions. Negative thoughts often include cognitive distortions or thinking errors. For example, viewing a single mistake as a sign that you always mess up is an overgeneralization. Labeling the distortion can help you see it for what it is. Then reframe failure into actionable feedback. You want to use adversity as a performance accelerator. We can use this stuff to make ourselves better at the things we're doing. We can let it fuel you. We want to change how we're looking at it. We got to reframe it. Once the unhelpful narrative has been challenged and actively reframed the situation as a source of useful information, then we can start getting to work. So change the language, change the words used to describe the situation. An example of this would be, instead of saying I failed the test, say there was no success on that attempt. Instead of saying I'm a failure, you could say this is a temporary setback. See it as data. Step back emotionally and treat the outcome as objective data. What information did this experience provide that can be used next time? When we fail, it's helpful because you learn things from it and it's going to help you grow. It's going to help you do things better. So don't be afraid of failure. You just have to be willing to take something from it and learn from it. Failure only becomes a failure if we don't learn anything from it and we go through it again. Use the start, stop, continue method. This is a practical framework for tuning insight into action. So start would be what new approaches should you try next time. Stop would be what actions didn't work and should be avoided. And then continue, what elements of your process were successful and should be repeated. So it's just a quick way, start, stop, continue, to figure out what worked, what didn't, what things you need to get away from, what things you need to do more of. Adopt a growth mindset. Internalize the belief that abilities can be developed through dedication and hard work, and that setbacks are natural learning experiences. Adding the word yet to a self-limiting thought reinforces this. For example, I'm not good at this yet. If we add in that little piece, it softens it and it gives us more room to grow. So be aware of that and keep that in mind as you're going through your day and try and just change the way you're thinking throughout your day. You might find yourself using a lot of limiting beliefs quite often without even recognizing it. And then just keep looking for the silver lining. Identify what went right. Even in negative situations, there's always something. For example, a presentation may not have landed, but the courage was still demonstrated by speaking in front of the group. There's always something positive there. It's just our willingness to look for it. Another example of resilience and facing failure and keep moving is James Dyson. A lot of what led to his success is relentless persistence. The founder of Dyson Vacuum experienced more than 5,000 failed prototypes before finally perfecting his product. After years of tirelessly working and rejections from manufacturers, his endless development process nearly bankrupted him. Going back to that entrepreneur piece, a lack of money, a lack of success, lots of failures, it's really hard to do. So we have to have that resilience to deal with this, and we got to be able to handle this constant rejection and failures and even the financial uncertainty of what might happen. Dyson invested everything he had and risked total financial ruin for his new product. And this does not mean we should just go be reckless, but sometimes when we believe in something, we have to double down on it and really believe in ourselves. If we don't believe in us and what we're trying to do, why is anyone else going to believe in it? Instead of being deterred, Dyson viewed each failure as a learning opportunity. He persisted through 5,126 failures and ultimately succeeded on the 5,127th attempt. His story exemplifies the importance of persistence in the face of repeated setbacks, because setbacks are going to happen, especially if you're trying to create something, you're trying to run a company, you're trying to reach a high level of performance. There's a reason everyone talks about it, but not everyone does it. If it was easy, everyone would do it. So we have to put ourselves to a place where we're willing to do things other people aren't willing to do to find that success. And to get there, we're going to have to build up resilience. Rituals pre-performance, whether that be before a meeting, before a presentation, before a competition, whatever it might be, whatever you're doing, can really help us. You can have rituals or anchors that help build you up and set you up for success. This could be a certain way that you go through things. Maybe it's a certain song you listen to before you go on a sales call. Maybe it's a certain motivational talk that you listen to before you go out on the field and compete. Whatever it is. But there's a lot of things that show us that rituals are far more than just superstition. They are potent mental strategies that set us up for success and kind of line up that narrative in our mind and set us up to perform in the way we need to perform. So find rituals and anchors that really work for you. And if you're not sure what those things could be, reach out to me, send me a message, and just say anchor, and I'll jump in with you and help you find an anchor. And I'm not doing this for any kind of anything other than just helping you guys out. That's why I tell you guys to reach out. So don't worry about having to get signed up for anything or anything like that. Like, this is just a quick tip that I'm trying to give you guys. So just send me the word anchor, and I'll give you some cool things that you can start working on to build up that pre-performance ritual for yourself and have an anchor that helps you get through things. Another part that's really big in all of this is breath work. Breath work is huge in resilience because of parasympathetic activation. Breath work promotes resilience by activating that nervous system, the rest and digest system, which counters the fight or flight system by regulating stress hormones. This improves focus, it cultivates emotional regulation, it cultivates a state of calm, and it helps individuals better navigate stressful situations and recover more quickly from adversity. There's a lot of different breathing mechanisms out there that you could explore. There's thousands of different breathing techniques, so if you find one out there that you like, and they all do kind of different things, so explore them a little bit. If you find something that works, just keep doing it. But explore it a little bit, see what's out there. You might find some things out there that you haven't heard of that actually are more helpful than you thought. So don't be afraid to put yourself out there and try out some paced breathing or intentional breathing exercises like diaphragmatic breathing or alternate nostril breathing or anything else. There's a lot of stuff out there. So just be open to kind of exploring those things and seeing what there could be. The other side of this is micro recoveries. Resilience is built in small resets, not just big breakthroughs. Sometimes we forget that going through things in smaller stages and smaller scales can really help us when things get bigger. Micro recoveries are brief intentional pauses that help us recharge and reset in the face of daily stressors. Unlike major life changes or big breakthroughs, these small consistent actions are the foundational building blocks of long-term resilience. They prevent the cumulative effort of minor fatigue and stress from depleting us, helping us to bounce back better and faster from setbacks. There are some tools we can use, like we talked about before. Like journaling is always good because that's helpful with just seeing when things are happening, when things are going wrong. Even if it is some of these micro recoveries. If we're seeing what's going wrong and what's happening, and we kind of write it down, it gives us a chance to reflect and see what's going on, and we can build up strategies that better help us, and we can maybe slow down any of the emotional assumptions or judgments we might jump into ourselves. There are more tools that you can use to find success with this. We talked about DBT tools that can help translate this to performance resilience and help build you up. We talked about that with distress tolerance, emotion regulation, and other things as well. We could also use EMDR. We talked about that briefly. We talked about CBT with reframing things cognitively. And there's a lot of other tools out there as well. There's no shortage of things to do. It's about what works for you and trying things out. So don't be afraid to put yourself out there. Perfectionism is a big thing as well, and it does have a huge impact on resilience. Perfectionism, especially maladaptive perfectionism, negatively impacts resilience by fostering anxiety, burnout, and imposter syndrome. This can undermine confidence and create negative social outcomes. Perfectionists often have unrealistic expectations, fixate on mistakes, and fear failure, hindering their ability to cope with challenges and maintain mental well-being. Conversely, resilience can be cultivated by developing a more flexible mindset, seeking social support, and aiming for good enough rather than unattainable perfect standards. Burnout is a failure of resilient systems, not willpower. Burnout is not a personal failure of willpower. It's not that you're not working hard enough. What this really is that the system you're using of resilience is not working anymore. Willpower is a finite resource that can be fatigued, and resilience is a complex system involving psychological, relational, and physiological components that can become overwhelmed by chronic stress. Viewing burnout as a systems failure shifts the focus from individual deficiencies to the unsustainable demands and insufficient resources within a person's environment. Sometimes it's not because we're not working hard enough, or it's not that we don't want it enough. Sometimes we're just in a situation where it's not working, and that happens. And we have to look at that honestly and not just beat ourselves up. The conventional view that burnout can be overcome by individual grit or pushing through is flawed for several reasons. Willpower is a limited resource, like we talked about. Psychological studies suggest that self-control can be depleted over time through overuse. Relying solely on willpower to overcome chronic stress is like running a computer with too many programs and no charger. It will inevitably crash at some point. It also externalizes responsibility. Framing burnout as a personal failing blames the individual for a problem rooted in their circumstances. Organizations that offer resilience training without addressing systematic issues may be perpetuating this harmful narrative and avoiding accountability. It also masks real issues. Focusing on individual mindset or motivation ignores the external factors that contribute to burnout, such as excessive workload, lack of control, and toxic workplace culture. These systematic problems can't be solved with personal effort alone. Sometimes we got to change the actual system. It can also lead to toxic resilience. Too much of anything in any direction can get bad. The relentless expectation to be on or constantly performing can cause individuals to suppress their needs and ignore warning signs, leading to more severe burnout. So we got to be aware of this, and we can't put things too far out there. We have to sometimes change the system and what's happening in the environment of what's going on. It's not just pushing harder, sometimes it's working smarter. Another example of resilience is Fred Smith with FedEx. While at Yale, Smith wrote a paper outlining his idea for an overnight delivery service, and he received a C grade because his professor deemed the concept impractical. So even from the get-go, when he's putting this out there in school, he's being told this probably won't work, don't even try it. And he did. He gave it a shot, and the company struggled financially in its early years, and at one point, Smith famously used his last $5,000 to gamble in Las Vegas to keep the company afloat. Today, his improbable idea has grown into a global logistics giant, and everyone knows what it is, and most people have used it at some point in their life. And this came from a place where multiple people told him this was not going to work, and there's multiple actual situations he had gone through where it was literally not working. They were about to go bankrupt. So we got to be willing to face failure. We're going to have things go wrong sometimes, and we're going to have to be able to work with that and keep going. Let's talk a little bit about the fear of failure versus actual failure. While recovering from an actual failure can be difficult, many sources suggest that recovering from the fear of failure can be even harder. Actual failures provide valuable lessons and a chance to rebuild, whereas the fear of failure can trap people in a cycle of inaction and regret, and we tend to beat ourselves up. The fear of failure can be more paralyzing and damaging than failure itself. It prevents growth and experience by constantly avoiding risk. A person with a fear of failure robs themselves of opportunities to learn and build resilience. It also keeps us stuck in a negative cycle. The anxiety and self-doubt that come with fear of failure can become a self-fulfilling prophecy. When you are constantly worried about failing, you may procrastinate or self-sabotage, leading to the very failure you feared. Kind of going back to that narrative again, if we're going to keep ourselves aligned with what we think is happening. It can be worse than reality. The fear of failure is often based on worst-case scenarios that are much more dramatic and damaging in your mind than they would be in reality. Most of you have probably had that before, thinking about how a situation is going to go wrong, and you're going to the worst possible case situation, but most of the time that doesn't happen. It's often rooted in shame as well. For many, the fear is not about the failure itself, but about the shame and embarrassment that might come from it, the social judgment. This shame can be deeply connected to one's sense of self-worth. There's also learned helplessness versus learned resilience, the psychology of giving up versus bouncing back. Learned helplessness is the passive, unmotivated state that develops after experiencing repeated, uncontrolled, negative events. Learned resilience, in contrast, is the proactive skill of not only enduring adversity, but using it as an opportunity for growth and stronger adaptation. We are what we do. So we got to practice what we want to do. If we're going to practice bouncing back, it's going to make it easier to bounce back when things go wrong. So you want to keep on building these things up and keep on doing these things and keep on changing how we're looking at this. Because if we get to keep practicing that learned resilience, you're going to be able to use it when the time is right. If you keep practicing that learned helplessness, it's going to show up when you don't want it. It's going to make things even harder for you. There are going to be things that go wrong. I promise. That's part of anything. It's part of reaching these high levels. You're going to put yourself out there. You're going to take a risk. And with taking risks, you're going to fail at some point. And again, failure is not bad. Failure is a data point. It helps us figure out what's going on, what didn't work, so we can learn more and we can get things going better. So don't be afraid of failures. Don't be afraid of things going wrong. Don't be afraid of a good comeback, because comebacks are a part of this stuff all of the time. And community helps us with this resilience all the time. We need to have people to lean on, whether that be coaches or mentors or teammates or colleagues or coworkers or bosses. Having the right people around us to lean on helps us develop that personal resilience, because they can support us and they can help push us in directions to grow this. They can give us ideas of ways to build up ourselves because they know us and they understand how we work. And there's a paradox that happens with high achievers and resilience. The resilience paradox for high achievers describes how the same traits that drive their success also expose them to unique vulnerabilities. This is why I have this podcast, The Premier Mindset, because the struggles we go through trying to reach these top levels in life are going to be different than people who don't want to reach those levels and they just want to find stability, because we're doing different things. While these individuals appear strong and capable, their relentless pursuit of excellence, perfectionism, and fear of failure can create intense internal pressure that increases their risk for burnout, anxiety, and imposter syndrome. And this stuff is all attached to our identity as well. Identity shapes resilience because it's attached to what we think we can do. We have to believe to achieve, right? That goes back to Muhammad Ali of I am the greatest. If I think I'm the greatest, then there's a chance I might be. If I don't think I'm the greatest, there's no chance you're going to be the greatest. This isn't saying we have to go be cocky or go just yell at everybody and tell them how great we are or anything like that. It's just that way we talk to ourselves, the mindset we take on as we go into things in life, when we face challenges, does matter. And our identity is listening all the time. That narrative you are forming for yourself matters a lot, and we got to be mindful of what we're creating. There's also another added piece of public pressure if you're putting yourself out there, whether you're a CEO or an athlete or any of these things that has that spotlight on you. It's a different type of pressure, and some of these techniques we've talked about in this episode and in past episodes can be helpful. There are some different strategies that we get into as well. And if you are dealing with public pressure, let me know. We could talk through that. It looks a little different, and it doesn't happen that often, which is why I'm not going to go into it a bunch in this episode, but it is absolutely a thing. So I wanted to point that out, and I want to let you guys know if you want help with that to reach out, let me know, and I can tell you more things on that. And there is resilience in leadership. Sometimes we have to model it, whether that be being a team captain and modeling it for the rest of your team, or being a CEO and trying to lead that company that you're running. We got to lead by example. The way you do things, the way you handle things, people are watching, people are going to see it, especially if they're looking up to you. And if you're handling these things in destructive, not so helpful ways, you're going to see other people in your organization or on your team do it similarly too. So be aware of what we're putting out there and how we're handling this stuff, because people are watching, and sometimes we got to lead by example and show them what we want so they can do it too. Resilience isn't about ignoring struggle, it's about engaging with it effectively. So don't be afraid of things going wrong. Don't be afraid of struggle. Look at it as an opportunity, as a place to grow, as a place to get better. You're never going to reach the high echelons of whatever you're doing without facing failure or struggle. It's never going to happen, I promise you. So don't be scared of it. Don't avoid it. Don't run away from it. Face it, embrace it, get what you need, set yourself up in the right way so that when this stuff happens, you keep building and growing and you're not collapsing. Resilient minds, premier results. We have to build ourselves up, and those premier results are going to follow. To reach premier performance, you have to create the mindset to be in that realm. It is not just on talent. It's not just based on physical ability. It's based on our ability to handle the things that are going to come at us as we're operating at these levels. Because even if you get to that point and you stay up there for just a short amount of time, at some point something's going to knock you back down unless you have the resilience to stay up there for a long period of time. Recognition is the first step. If we don't know something's happening, it's really hard to do anything about it. So catch yourself reflecting and see what you're doing and recognize what's working and what isn't for you, and don't be afraid to change things up. If you find somebody in your life that could benefit from this episode, whether it's a coworker, someone you're working with, someone that you think is going to benefit in a thing that they're doing right now, whether it's a competition or a performance because they need to build up a little resilience, this could be great to send their way. So anyone that you think might need to build up a little bit of resilience or is dealing with just hard things in general, send them this episode, see if they get something from it. The whole goal of this is just bringing this out to as many people as we can to help you guys out and help more and more people reach greatness in their lives. If it is helpful for you, make sure to leave us a review. We love hearing from you guys, so you can reach out in multiple different ways, but those reviews are helpful for us because it just gets our stuff out to more and more people. And again, we're just trying to get this out to people and help make life easier for people. Go find the successes and live the life that we want to live. I make it a point to give you guys actionable tools to find success in your life because I want you all to be more successful. And I love staying connected with you all. So let me know of the successes. Tell me what's going on. If you're having failures or struggles, let me know of those too. I want to help out. I want to be a resource. I want to make it feel like you guys aren't alone in these things. But the only way I can do that is if you guys lean on me a little bit and let me know what's going on. I'd love to help. And I've talked to many of you already, which has been great. But I just want to let you guys know, don't be afraid to reach out. I'm always here for you guys, and I want to help out however I can. And I will help however I can. If you do have anything, you can reach out in multiple ways. You can email me at teammailer@premierperformancereno.com. My last name is spelled M-A-H-L-E-R. You can text or call me directly at 775-561-0056. We got the Instagram and the TikTok with the same name, Premier_Performance_Reno for both of those. And then the Facebook page and the LinkedIn page have the same name as well, which is Premier Performance LLC. We have our Twitter or X account at Premier Reno LLC, and then our website, www.premierperformancereno.com. So feel free to reach out, get involved in all these communities. We're going to keep on building this stuff, and we're going to put out stuff every single day so you guys have more and more to work on, and you can keep reaching for those highest levels of success that you could find in your life. I want you guys to chase greatness, and I want you guys to experience it. It's going to be hard, it's going to be scary, but you've got to be willing to put yourself out there, and there are tools to make it easier. So don't be afraid of it, don't fear it, just go after it. Next week, we're going to keep going with all this. We have new episodes coming out every Sunday. And next week, we're going to talk about chain analysis and finding the root of struggles or behaviors to help understand why they're there, why we're doing what we're doing, and trying to do something about it. We may not be able to fix every problem, but if we can figure out where it's coming from, it's going to give us a whole lot of a better chance to fix it later. So do what you can. Go have some fun. Put yourself out there. Don't be afraid of greatness. Don't be afraid of failure. Go find that success. Go be the best you can be. Live your life. Go have some fun. And if you need anything, just reach out. Let me know. Otherwise, I'll see you guys next week, and we're going to keep building. I hope you have a good one. I'll see you soon.